Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another video of History Valley Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. James Tabor, and today we're going to be talking about his upcoming course from Efficient Podcast, Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls. The link to purchase the course in the description below. And with that being said, it's good to have you back on History Valley Podcast, Dr. Tabor.
Jacob, it's always good to be with you. You're one of my favorite YouTubers, and I love doing work with you. And I know this course is going to really interest your viewers.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have you here. Can you tell us about the connections that you see between Jesus and the Dead Sea Scrolls? Why is it important to understand the Dead Sea Scrolls in relation to Jesus?
Absolutely. Here's how I do it with my students. So I'll do it with you. You know a lot of this, but maybe a lot of the viewers won't. I've got notes here. I'm going to give you 12 things that are about Jesus or the Dead Sea Scrolls. You figure it out. An apocalyptic messianic group, they see themselves as preparing the way in the wilderness. Like Isaiah said, a voice in the wilderness. They preach a new covenant. They call themselves children of light. They immerse in water for the remission of sins, and you join the group. You become a child of light by getting immersed. They follow a prophet or teacher like Moses. They think he's the new Moses. He's going to gather the tribes of Israel back and reconstitute this new covenant. They believe that he has been killed, but depending on interpretation, I believe they think he still has been exalted to heaven and he's coming back again. Okay? They emphasize the Holy Spirit. They have an inner council of 12 that runs the group with the teacher. They sell their possessions and have communal living. They don't like that Jerusalem, the temple. They think it's very corrupt, and they call it brood of vipers, den of thieves. And they consider prayer as their sacrifice. If you say, well, you're not going to the temple, what are you going to do? Our prayers, our lives are the temple. We are the temple, they say that. Now, did I describe the Jesus movement or the Dead Sea Scroll movement? This is what I always ask my students. Most of them, because they haven't read the scrolls yet, and many people haven't, they've heard of them, but to actually read and study the scrolls, I think people feel like they need a guide. Like, well, okay, I could buy a copy, but where would I start? And I need help, you know? It'd be like if you'd never heard of the Bible and somebody said, well, here's a Bible, read it. Well, it'd be okay, but probably need some guidance as to the different periods and some of the different things about it. So that's what the course does. So really, I'm describing both. It's everything I said, all 12, apply to the Dead Sea Scroll group and to Jesus. So even though the label Essene is used a lot by people who, you know, they're beginning to get they go, oh yeah, there's Pharisees, Sadducees, and this will be the Essenes, right? But see, these 12 are not mentioned by Josephus, as you know, when you read his description of the Essenes. A couple of these are, I would say maybe 4 of them, but he doesn't tell you who they really are. I think he kind of likes them. And if he told you who they really are, the Romans would be right there rounding him up and killing them, I'm telling you. And they did fight against the Romans in the Roman War. So I think he kind of wants to protect them. He also wants to say, you know, we Jews have 3 philosophical schools, he calls them: Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes. They're kind of like Pythagoreans. You know, they're very noble and so forth, dedicated. But he doesn't tell you they're a messianic, radical, apocalyptic group that basically think the kingdom of God is near and they're going to overthrow all of Rome's power, and their leader is going to, you know, be the ruler to come. So we're going to delve into that, and that's, I think, what makes this so fascinating. So most people haven't heard of this. I'm sorry, you got to edit this. Most people have heard of the scrolls, as I said, but to read them is a new thing. So in this course, we really do read a considerable portion of the scrolls. You know, when I started graduate school years ago, this was my copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here's a later one when I was teaching You can see it's growing a little because we're getting more scrolls. They were found in 1947 in caves around the Dead Sea, the lowest spot on Earth. And there's a settlement called Qumran where they were hidden around when the Romans came in and destroyed Jericho and their settlement, and they were fleeing and hiding in caves and so forth. But this is the book we're going to use today. So look how many more scrolls. So in 1991, we finally got all the scrolls released, and about 40% of them weren't out till then. So from 1947 to 90, we're working with books like this. And you can do a lot with what you had back then. But now to have all of the scrolls. So one of the things I do in the course, Jacob, it's 10 lectures. I have a whole lecture on what's in the newly published scrolls. Now, I know 1991 is over 30 years ago, but many people haven't kept up. You know, maybe they had a book years ago. Oh, I've got a book somewhere on the Dead Sea Scrolls. But to read them and to study them line by line, I take you through the Dead Sea Scrolls, just like I would do in a college course. This is like the course I've taught for years and on the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I add the archaeology and the history. When all the scrolls were released in the fall of 1991, guess where I was when they were released? I was at Qumran in Israel on the Dead Sea, and I stayed there a month. And I was with Robert Eisenman, and we were exploring caves, and the scrolls were coming out at that time. So it was really exciting. And I've got a video that comes with the course. It's a news video that was done at that time, and I'm in it. You'll see me as I look to 1991 or two. It's pretty interesting to watch young Dr. Tabor teaching a course. And anyway, so just the fact that I was there at the very place, and Eisenman and Herschel Shanks, the editor of Biblical Archaeology Review, are the ones that released the photographs. They got hold of them, and I guess you call it like the bootleg edition. They said, you know, enough is enough. The scroll team has had these for all of these years. Let's just put it out for everybody, and they did. And now everybody's glad that they did. But there were a lot of fighting and a lot of, you know, jealousies and so forth. Who's going to get this and who's going to get that? And now anybody can read the scrolls, and I give you a web link to a website where you can go actually look at all the scrolls and the pictures. They're all out and they're all published. So we go through the scrolls, all the major scrolls we cover. One of the big things that people are fascinated with, they have their own writings, but they also have copies of the Hebrew Bible. About 40% of their scrolls are their Bible. Now, remember, we date them to the 1st century BC. Some even put them in the early 2nd century BCE. So this would be 150 years before Jesus even came along. And they're reading a version of the Hebrew Bible. I happen to have a Leningrad Codex here. This is the printed copy of the oldest complete Hebrew Bible we have. It's dated to about 1000 AD. And in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have in Cave 1, the very first cave found, a complete copy of the book of Isaiah. So everybody's going to want to know, well, if I read this one from 1000 AD and one from probably 100 BCE, a copy, is it going to be the same? And what you'll hear from apologists is, oh, guess what? Good news. It's all the same, just minor differences. True, in a way, most of the differences are minor, but it's the same, you know, when Bart Ehrman teaches New Testament, you've had him on your channel, and his big thing he's really began with was textual criticism. That's his main field of the New Testament. And he would have to agree with this. You know, yeah, most of the changes are small, but what about the ones that aren't small? What about the ones that really do make a difference in the meaning? And in a lecture, I take you through some examples of some of those, and then you can get the Dead Sea Scroll Bible and read it yourself and make your own comparisons. And I give you the link to that as well. So that's a really interesting thing to pursue, because some of those critical differences where a word or a phrase is missing or something added, it can shift the whole prophecy or the whole text that you're reading. In this case, I'm thinking of Isaiah as one of the prophets. So there's just so much you'll learn in this course. The course pack is huge. It's like, I think it's over 50 pages. There are videos, extra videos, bonus videos. We even put in a tour video that Derek and I did when we were over there, where you get to see Derek and I go around the very places and talk about them. That was in October of 2022. And that's really exciting. You know, you're studying the scrolls, but maybe you haven't ever been on a trip over there. And lots of people that have seen Qumran or been on one of those kind of Holy Land tours, they don't really specialize enough in showing you everything. You stop at Qumran for lunch and you walk around a little bit. We see all the tour groups come through. They're interested, but I mean, it's very different when you actually have a course where you're studying the scrolls. So I think, Jacob, your viewers are ideal for this course. I mean, I know the subjects you cover, and you dig very, very deep into things, and you have studied yourself very deeply. And this course is going to match the kind of people that you address every day on your channel. So I'm so glad that you're going to feature it.
When you look at Jesus and you see these parallels, as you mentioned some of them earlier, like the brood of vipers, the 12, the Dead Sea Scrolls talk about the 12 and
Right.
the 12 disciples,
New
of the
covenant,
gospel,
so forth. Yeah.
you know. Do you think that the historical Jesus might have been part of their movement, or at least affiliated with them loosely in any way, and that's probably why why some of these parallels exist? Or do you think there's another reason why those parallels exist?
Great question. And really, that's kind of where the whole course leads, at the end. Like, how are you going to assess all this? So I'm not going to let out the secret, but I will say this about it. First of all, there are a lot of differences as well as similarities. I did take the cream off the top and told you the similarities. There's some differences. Secondly, if Jesus is 150 years later and the movement has failed in terms of prophecy, that phrase we use, when prophecy fails. So all of their expectations, all of their dreams, all their calculations of Daniel and the 70 weeks prophecy and when the end's going to come, that is long past. You're into, by the time of Jesus, the third or fourth generation of the group out at Qumran, and they last all the way up to 70. So probably Jesus, it's hard to say that he was like there and participating in everything they were all about, that far removed from the time of their teacher, who's the main one they followed, because things changed. It would be like thinking Christianity goes for 150 years. So you go down to Justin Martyr, let's say, right? And you go like, oh, what was Jesus like? Well, you're reading somebody that's giving you a view from later, you see. But we also have writings in the Dead Sea Scrolls that are their first writings, their charter writings. Those are really similar in many ways, but some differences. So I usually say to my students, I certainly don't think he was a card-carrying member. I don't think he grew up with them or anything like that. But I mean, you choose for yourself. If you ask John the Baptist, whom Jesus associates with and is baptized by, and you go, who are you? What are you doing? I'm the voice crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, preparing a people, calling them out. Everybody else is a brood of vipers. And then I read in the scrolls the same thing. I mean, you would have to be blind to say, oh, well, I doubt if there's any connection. Of course there's a connection. But you don't want to cut to the chase and say like, oh, Jesus is an Essene. Let's make it a little more complicated than that. First of all, you got to tell me what an Essene is by your definition. And how did you know that? If you're going by Josephus, he didn't tell you half the stuff we have in the scrolls. Excuse me. So you have to consider all that together. And I try to give, in fact, in the last lecture, as you would expect, lecture 10, it's called Putting It All Together. And I'm not going to tell you what I said, Jacob, but you're going to take the course and I'll come back on your channel and we can talk about it sometime.
That sounds great. Well, thank you for joining me today, James.
It's a pleasure always, Jacob. Bye-bye.
Oh.
Hello viewers, thanks for watching this video from the History Valley YouTube channel. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And if any of you wish to further support this channel, please consider checking out this channel's Patreon page and becoming a patron, and or donate through PayPal or through Super Chat during your live stream. Thank you.